everybody. Great to see you all again. A lot of familiar faces. Thank you all for joining today and taking the time. I know this is kind of in the middle of the day for a Tuesday, so appreciate that. We're just going to go ahead and get started. So today's topic is UGC 101 and a guide to navigating the UGC platform landscape. We're going to really be going over the basics of understanding the impacts of user-generated content as it pertains to YouTube, TikTok, Meta platforms, and how to properly understand the ways in which rights holders interact with them as well. As a brief introduction, if we haven't met, my name is Bryan Bakke. I'm the Director of Business Development here at Orfium. We're a music tech company that manages digital rights across the UGC platforms, which includes services for record labels, publishers, production music companies, and much more. So today we'll be hearing from Rob Smith, who is the SVP of Global Creative Sync at Extreme Music, as well as Emily Blanton, who is an account manager here at Orfium. Also, please feel free to add in any questions you may have into the Q&A. I know that we all had an opportunity to add questions before the registration process as well, so I'll try to cover as many as we can during the Q&A portion as time permits. So for today's agenda, we're going to be discussing the industry landscape. Then Emily will dive into all things for YouTube. I will discuss TikTok and Meta, and then Emily will then step back in to discuss metadata as it relates to proper collection on UGC platforms. Then we will have a Q&A with Rob regarding best practices in dealing with UGC platforms, and then we'll open it up for a Q&A for everybody. Also, today's presentation is recorded if you'd like to rewatch it or share along with your teams if they couldn't make it today. So as we talk through the 101 of what you need to know about user-generated content and taking it into account into your revenue streams, I thought it would really be good to first get an idea of the lay of the land. So UGC is a rapidly expanding sector. Back in the spring of 2019, UGC accounted for a massive 1.2 billion of the global recorded music industry revenues. And with social media on the rise, and the explosion of the creator economy, really, this opportunity is projected to skyrocket to just short of $6 billion year after year. So that's kind of a warm up just of what is going on in the landscape of user-generated content. I'm going to pass it over to Emily to talk about YouTube.
Hey, everyone. We'll start off with some basic UGC knowledge and definitions that will help us set a foundation as we go through the rest of the slides. So first of all, what is a CMS? Music rights owners use content management systems, or CMS, to provide the metadata of your different content types, including videos, sound recordings, and compositions to UGC platforms. This is your user interface on the back end of these platforms. It's also the primary way you can monitor usage and revenue generation, and also where you manage any copyright infringement to protect your music. Each of the UGC platforms has their own CMS you need to register for, deliver your assets and metadata to, and use to keep an eye on your music. They have built-in automatic scanners, so to speak, to track where your music is being used, but so far they're still far from reliable. So they also have manual claiming aspects to them as well. So within the CMS lives your assets. An asset is a track, cue, or song, and you can set different policies for your assets depending on what your goals are. For example, some default policies are route for review, monetize, track, block, etc. Each of these default policies are customizable to meet your needs. What this means for rights holders is that you can have control over how your assets are used. For example, a route for review to monetize policy can come in handy for production music companies who are licensing music for use on UGC platforms, giving them the ability to approve or deny any automatic claim for monetization before the claim is placed. With your assets, we do run into some issues sometimes. Life would not be life without conflicts, and as annoying as these issues can be, the CMS has avenues to solve them. Let's go through and define some common issues you may face with your assets. Number one is conflicts. This is when two or more parties may be claiming ownership of any given asset. While assets are in conflict, any money generated from claims is escrowed and only paid out to the remaining party holding ownership when the conflict is resolved in the form of back pay. Next, we have disputes. When a copyright claim is placed on a video, the uploader of the video has the right to dispute the claim. Once a claim is placed, the copyright claim is set to inactive. The CMS gives you the ability to accept or reject the dispute by reinstating the claim or releasing the claim. And then we also have reference overlaps. If two parties ingest the same sound recording, this can result in a reference overlap. This can be a portion of the reference or the entire reference. If a reference overlap occurs, you can action the issue by asserting ownership of the sections that overlap, or you can exclude the portions that overlap from your reference. So with our assets within the CMS, we then use them to create copyright claims. When an uploader publishes video content containing copyright material without permission or licensing, they may receive a copyright claim that allows copyright owners to take actions on the material they own. The copyright claim will use the asset and the associated policy that has been chosen by the rights holder to track, monetize, block, etc., whichever policy you have chosen. This is not to be confused with a removal request or a strike. While rights holders have the right to submit a removal request or a strike, a copyright claim does not necessarily mean the video will receive a removal request or a strike. And then we also have manual claiming within CMSs. All UGC platforms have some form of automatic copyright detection that places copyright claims. However, there are times when these systems fail to catch copyright material for various reasons. When this happens, the CMS gives you the ability to place a manual claim. This is an extremely important and helpful tool that empowers rights owners to take action for themselves. All right, so now that we have those definitions, let's move into YouTube specific information. At this point, YouTube has been in our lives for some time now. We're all pretty much familiar with the platforms, but there may be some unknown aspects of how the backend works for copyright owners. Let's go over some of that information. So we have Content ID. We spoke in the last slide about automatic detection systems. In YouTube, this system is called Content ID. Content ID is YouTube's automated fingerprinting system that enables copyright owners to identify YouTube videos that include content they own. YouTube only grants Content ID to copyright owners who meet specific criteria. Music gets put into Content ID by having access to the CMS. If you're a rights owner for music content, access can be obtained directly from YouTube through a label, publisher, or production music company who has access already, or through a rights management company. Having access to the CMS allows rights holders to ingest their music and to collect revenue. Keep in mind that gaining access to your own CMS directly through YouTube is extremely difficult. Their application process is lengthy and they rarely approve new CMSs. Even if you're able to prove ownership of a catalog, this is where working with rights management companies come in handy. And then revenue comes from copyright claims placed on UGC videos. By setting your asset policy to monetize, when copyright claims are placed either automatically through Content ID or manual claims, a portion of the ad and subscription revenue made on the video is paid out to the copyright owner. Okay, so next slide, how to get your music on YouTube. So first, you want to set up a Content ID or CMS account, as we discussed in the last slide. Then you put all of your metadata into a CSV. We'll go over some important information on metadata later, but for now, please note that metadata is key to monetization. Then we upload the CSV and your reference files, if you have them, to Content ID via the CMS. Upon ingestion, YouTube will link the metadata to the metadata to the reference files, and the combination of metadata and reference file creates an asset. These assets are used by Content ID to create copyright claims. Content ID sometimes misses instances of copyright usage. When you find a misclaiming opportunity, you can place a manual claim using their manual claiming tool. To ensure you're monetizing all your content, you'll likely need a designated search and claim team depending on the catalog size. So I'll pass it back over to Bryan now to talk about TikTok.
Yeah, thanks, Emily. That's great. So of course, we're all familiar with TikTok. It's kind of the elephant in the room. The numbers are pretty staggering. In 2019 alone, there was about 5 billion videos created on the platform. And then the following year, that number shot up by 80% to reach 9 billion videos. Really, each of these videos represents an opportunity. The growth of video creation translates directly into revenue opportunity. In 2022, TikTok had a massive user base of roughly 755 million people, which has grown 15% year on year, which just highlights the opportunities available for revenue on TikTok. So, a little bit about TikTok 101. What is Media Match? So Media Match is TikTok's rights owners portal, okay? It's similar to what Content ID is to YouTube. It's, however, much newer. It's designed for rights holders and is the place you go to place claims, upload new assets, release claims, and manage a catalog. So getting your music onto TikTok is a pretty similar process to YouTube. The way music is put onto TikTok is through various avenues depending on where you sit in the industry. So if you are a rights holder, like a record label or a production music library, you can use a company like Orfium or others to administer on your behalf. If you are a artist or a composer, you can use a distributor who is able to put your music onto TikTok or have the library that you're signed with to administer on your behalf. In rare instances, and if you're lucky enough, you can get your own direct deal with TikTok and have your own Media Match account. But again, just as Emily said with Content ID, it's extremely rare, and you need to have direct relationships with the platform to secure this. Now, if you have ever spent any amount of time on TikTok, which I'm sure we all have at length, you have probably heard manipulated audios that are either sped up, slowed down, remixed, or in other ways edited from the original form. So this is a really big trend right now on UGC platforms. So how do we account for these? In short, Media Match has a really hard time picking up the sound recording when it's manipulated. So the automatic fingerprinting system often misses these and can impact revenue greatly. So as a tech company, we felt like we needed to focus on this to make sure that rights holders were getting the revenue that they deserved, which is why we developed our lyric transcription technology that has been immensely successful in dealing with this issue. By fingerprinting and lyric metadata, we're able to identify more sounds that contain the original sound recording. Another important aspect that I want to highlight during this is the CML and the GML and how this differentiates from each other. So the CML stands for Commercial Music Library, and the GML stands for the General Music Library. The CML is a pre-cleared library that helps make it easier for brands to find and soundtrack their content to on TikTok. Now, this is only meant for accounts that are for marketing, advertising, sponsorships, endorsements, publicity, which makes music available without having to get a license directly. Now, on the other hand, the GML is a collection of all the music available for use on TikTok. So really only a creator account or those in the general public has access to the GML to use popular songs owned by major labels and publishers for non-commercial uses. So moving on to how TikTok revenue works. On TikTok, each video is called a creation, and every creation is associated with a sound. One single sound can be used in multiple creations. Once a sound is claimed, that claim then applies to all creations using that sound. So contrary to YouTube, royalties aren't based on the number of views a creation gets, but the number of creations that use your sound. So this is different from the views model that we see in YouTube, in which views drive the revenues. So for example, a single video could have 50 million views on TikTok, but the payout will only be for that one video creation, not the 50 million. Okay. And that TikTok only recognizes revenue after the sound is claimed. So, unfortunately, for rights owners, any revenue generated by creations before the claim is placed on the sound isn't actually considered. There is no retroactive claiming, and that is also true for YouTube. The importance of getting sounds claimed is because at the end of each month, the revenue pool that TikTok allots to rights holders is divided up by the share of claims. So if a sound has millions of creations, that rights holder will get more of the revenue pool than somebody who only has a few thousand creations with their sound. So unclaimed revenue or unclaimed usage equals lost revenue. So to drive home the importance of this in the claiming aspect, I want to reiterate just a few points here. For Media Match's fingerprinting system, it can be hard for it to identify all use cases of a sound, especially those that have been severely manipulated or changed. This is because the system is really in its elementary stage, and it's hard to find and track and monetize sounds across the board. In a recent trial that Orfium did in conjunction with one of our major partner clients, we found that roughly 25% of the sounds that contained our client's music were not claimed at all, which deeply impacts how revenue gets paid out. So moving on to Meta, it's gonna be similar to TikTok in many ways. So Meta includes both Facebook and Instagram and is controlled by the Meta's rights manager CMS. So rights manager is Meta's fingerprinting and CMS system, much like Content ID or Media Match. It's where rights holders go to deal with claims, allow listing, disputes, conflicts, and asset ingestion. Although Facebook has been around for a very long time, their rights manager CMS can still be best described as in an elementary stage due to a variety of factors. So how does revenue flow on Meta? It's, like I said, very similar to TikTok with a few different terms. So videos on Instagram are called Reels, and Reels are associated with an audio. So when an audio is claimed, it will then cascade down to all Reels using that audio. And again, revenue is only generated after an audio is claimed, and nothing prior to that will be counted as revenue. Manual claiming is also an extremely important factor for Meta platforms, as the rights manager system will sometimes miss claims, just like Content ID will or Media Match, necessitating a human to go in and manually claiming the video. This is especially true for manipulated audio. So how do we get music onto Meta? So for libraries, labels, and publishers, you can use a company like Orfium or others to distribute and administer your catalog to Meta platforms. For artists or composers, you can use a distributor of your choice pending that they deliver to Meta. In a rare instance, you may be able to sign a direct deal with Meta for your own rights manager CMS. So if you did want to go about that, it is helpful to know that when requesting your own rights manager CMS, you must first create a Facebook page that is associated with you or a brand. Then you will request access to rights manager using their application form. And as mentioned, most companies are not granted access to it. A few things that they look out for are content eligibility, catalog size, any past infringements, and is there a need for you to have one? 9 times out of 10, I would say it's okay for artists and composers to go through their distributor to get Meta access and for catalogs themselves to go through a company like Orfium for administration. So I'm going to pass it back to Emily to talk about metadata.
Thanks, Bryan. So that may have been a lot of information, but we want to make sure you walk away from the session with clear first steps towards getting started with UGC for your catalogs. The first crucial step to getting your music onto UGC platforms is all about sorting and uploading your metadata. Now, you might be wondering, what exactly is music metadata? Well, it's basically the digital DNA of your song file. It includes important information like the artist name, ISRCs, writer, song title, and territory ownership, just to name a few. This metadata is crucial for identifying, sorting, and delivering your music to these platforms in a format they can read. Think of it as the code that helps these platforms understand and categorize your music. So before you even think about uploading anything to a UGC platform, make sure to organize and perfect your metadata. Because their metadata readers are finicky, if there are any discrepancies between upper and lowercase letters, inconsistent spacing, and underscores being used, they won't be able to use it. As rights owners, this is the golden ticket to making sure your music is discoverable and, most importantly, monetizable on any UGC platform. So how to handle your metadata? Since metadata is so important to UGC monetization, we want to give you some tips on how to handle it properly. Full and accurate metadata picture for all assets, as we just discussed. Really paying attention to the details of the metadata is crucial for your music and UGC platforms. Next, high quality reference files. If you're uploading sound recordings, having high quality MP3 or WAV files is important for the automatic detection systems the UGC platforms use. These reference files are used to detect usage of your music and videos, so you'll want to have the highest quality possible. In addition to high quality reference files, you'll also want them to be as unique as possible. As good as these detection systems like Content ID can be, they are not perfect. When uploading music, be mindful that things like arrangements can cause unnecessary claims, and using samples can cause reference overlaps. Each platform has different requirements for what metadata is needed or what type of reference files they will accept. Be sure to research these requirements for each platform to make the ingestion process as seamless as possible. And finally, if you choose the route of allowing a rights management company to take care of UGC for you, please be sure to use a reputable company. Really do your research to understand who will handle your metadata and copyright effectively. Whether you are a label or an independent composer, you really want to make sure the company handling your music for UGC is taking every step to ensure it is properly managed.
Perfect. Yeah, thank you, Emily. Next, we're gonna have Rob jump in here, and we have a few questions for you, Rob. So I think just on the topic of this, in your experience, what is or which UGC platform is delivering the best for your catalog?
Thanks, Brian. I think in terms of revenue at this point in time, that would be YouTube. And I think the reason for that is it's well established, and we've been utilizing CMS for a number of years via different distributors. So I'd say at the moment, that model is working best for us. I don't know if anyone else has a different experience. It'd be good to hear that, but certainly for Extreme, YouTube is where it's at.
Sure. No, that's great. And just for the topic of kind of UGC 101, what advice would you give to other production music companies who are thinking about or about to take the first step into any one of these UGC platforms?
I think Emily covered it quite well. It's very important to have your metadata. All of those fields need to be carefully reviewed to make sure that it's going to work, and also the sample issue that you raised as well, Emily, is very important, so that you don't get any claim issues, and also to make sure that you have the rights. And I suppose because really this space is additive to our core business, it's useful to have a distributor. There's a number of different distributors out there. Songtrader, AdRev, Epic Elite. We have a deal with Orfium, and we're very happy with that. But definitely have a chat to different distributors and figure out which one works best for your catalog. We interact with a lot of different distributors because parts of our catalog are administered by different distributors, and they're all very, very responsive and helpful in helping us sort out any issues on platforms.
Yeah, that's great. And then lastly, what are the first steps that you need to take when onboarding with a new UGC partner? If I think you want to talk about registration or ISRC, ISWC codes, anything like that would be helpful.
Yeah, that's really important, Brian. Making sure that your works are registered with all of the relevant PROs helps. Making sure that you have ISRC codes, ISWC codes, that your writer and publisher splits are robust, that you control the works, and that you're able to engage someone either in-house or a third party to review your metadata for upload, so that when it's on the platform, it's doing what it's supposed to do.
Perfect. Well, that's really helpful. Thanks, Rob. And I
Yeah,
think,
thank you.
yeah. And so I think now we're gonna open it up for any questions for Rob, Emily, and maybe I can jump in as well if I can answer them. It looks like we do have a few in the Q&A and some at the pre-registered questions. So, Emily, we have one here that says, "Hi, Emily. What again is a reference?" Meaning a reference file.
A reference file would just be your sound recording. So in YouTube, they call it a reference file, but it's just the sound recording. So the MP3 or the WAV file.
Hopefully that answers your
Yeah.
question. And then we also have one here that says, "You mentioned Media Match. What about MRI music reports for TikTok?" So it's a really good question. That actually is another question that we got in the pre-registered questions as well, about how TikTok is paying music publishers. So right now, TikTok is outsourcing all of that to MRI and pays the publishing royalty process through them. But TikTok, as of Q1 of 2024, is going to be going direct with publishers. So that is kind of a real-time update and is pretty much as much as I know on it. I don't know if Rob or Emily, you had anything to add to it, but that's kind of where we stand in terms of MRI and publishing collections. Let's see here. What are some other ones? I am told that I cannot at this point update my metadata on CD Baby. So I was 40th artist on CD Baby. I am told that I cannot at this point update my metadata with them. Artist name, song title, and ISRC are there, but is that enough? Any suggestion? Will I be missing collections with that data being limited? Emily, do you have any opinion on that one?
You can definitely update your metadata within the CMS. It's just re-ingesting or updating your metadata. That's not a problem. I feel like artist name, song title, ISRC, that those are very important. But if you needed like allocations based on writers splits or anything like that, probably you would need to update composer information. But I feel like you should be able to update those things. And again, it would only affect your revenue if you're having issues with, writer information or anything like that.
Right. Yeah. Emily, I think one more for you here because you are the YouTube expert. When
Yes, you
uploading,
are.
yeah, when uploading to YouTube Content ID, is this different from uploading art tracks to the CMS? We know how to upload art tracks, but we want to make sure that we're actually getting our files properly set up in Content ID for monetization. That question's from Jason.
Yeah, of course. So art tracks are actually YouTube Music, which is YouTube's DSP. So that's separate from Content ID. You'll have to ingest sound recordings, which can be embedded to art tracks. So you'll want to check your art tracks to make sure if there's a sound recording and composition embedded within that art track. And then for Content ID, they use the sound recording to place automated claims. So you'll want art tracks, sound recordings, and compositions.
Perfect.
Let me know if you need any follow-up information there.
That's great. And then Rob, I think this one might be pretty good for you. How does the surge in UGC and the prominence of production music houses impact the music industry?
I guess it creates a very competitive landscape to make sure that you're getting paid and that your music is being placed. Um, and you need to be geared up to take advantage of that opportunity.
Perfect. Yeah. Thanks, Rob. Thanks. We also have another one here. As TikTok begins to push long form content more, will there be any change to the business model in terms of paying per view versus per create? Yeah, thanks, John, for that. You know, it's hard for us to say, not, being a part of TikTok and not being in those internal conversations. That it, in my honest opinion, I don't see it trending that way. I do think TikTok will stay on the creation level rather than the view level. I think with especially in these early elementary stages of these new platforms, the reporting is really difficult for them to grasp in terms of views, where it's being played, and all these other things. So my assumption is that it will continue on the path that it is right now. But that's not to say that it can't go to a per view business model. But that's a really good question, and something that we're really interested to keep an eye out here at Orpheum as well. Let's see here. So does TikTok and Meta also pay a portion to the content creators like YouTube does? That one was by Marco. So I think, Emily, correct me if I'm wrong. Um, you can have you can get paid out if you're a content creator if you have a specific type of claim on the video. Is that right? Like a web claim?
Yes, so you would have to be eligible for monetization. And then yes, they do pay out their creators. I can't speak to how much comparatively to YouTube. I've heard TikTokers complain that it's not as much as they get on YouTube, but yes, they do pay out if you qualify for their monetization.
Yeah, I think you have to hit certain thresholds in order to get that type of payout.
Yes.
And then Emily, another one for you, most likely. Can you do any additional content ID claims on YouTube Music specifically?
So this kind of goes back to what we were talking about with the art tracks. YouTube Music is the DSP, and that's where you upload your art tracks for YouTube Music. The content ID portion would be for the YouTube side with videos. So user generated content videos. That's how you would monetize over there. But YouTube Music is separate from the video side of YouTube, if that makes sense.
Perfect. Yeah. And then so Rob, this one, if maybe Rob and Emily, if you want to dive in on this one, how can monetization of worldwide UGC content work well when you have different sub-publishers across the world?
That's a really good question. I guess that on YouTube, the way that it works is the revenue is paid out based on where the viewer is viewing the video. So in that instance, if you have a working relationship with a sub-publisher, you can navigate that space so that you both get paid based on who viewed the video. Probably defer to Emily for other platforms. I'm quite limited in knowledge on how that piece works.
For YouTube, I would add that it's difficult to separate. YouTube does pay out per country and per territories, but the viewers, so it's hard to like license a specific country, right? So because of, let's say we license within Korea, South Korea, and then we have viewers outside of South Korea watching that same video. There's really no way to license just that territory. So YouTube is sort of limited that way. So if you have a license for one territory, it's going to license all the territories or allow list all the territories. So that is definitely like a limitation that YouTube has. But as far as from a rights management perspective, when it comes to licensing, we work really hard with our client sub-publishers to make sure that we're covering all of their territories. And that we're getting all of that licensing information. So a lot of times I'm not only working with production music clients, I'm also working with their sub-publishers to make sure that we're getting all of that information properly ingested for them.
Right. Yeah. We have a few more here from the pre-register as well. What are the next big UGC platforms currently under the radar? I know, Emily, that you have kind of a finger on the pulse on this. What are the most lucrative ones today? Are there any things that we should be looking out for? Hierarchy of UGC platforms. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm constantly trying to research and find the newest and coolest app that the kids are using. And there are other UGC platforms out there. I don't see any on the rise in the way that we've seen TikTok in the last few years. I definitely think TikTok is still like planted as like the number one app that, the younger generations are using. So from my perspective, the three that we have, YouTube, TikTok, Meta, are really just sort of the champions in the UGC world as of right now. And I don't see anything anytime soon coming up to like eclipse those three. But obviously, we'll see what the future holds, but that's how we are right now.
Definitely. And then another one just on metadata. With the metadata issues that .wav files have, does that create additional issues since that is the type of file that is typically requested?
So sorry, say that question one more time. Are there any issues with what now?
So with the metadata issues that WAV files have, does that create additional issues since that is the file type that is typically requested?
We don't see any issues with YouTube. I think we typically take MP3s, but I think YouTube also takes WAV files, and we don't have any issues with that. I'd be interested to hear if other people have had issues with WAV files, but from our end, we haven't seen that.
So how do we go about making a manual claim as a rights holder for Instagram audio, specifically for trending audio? So that's an interesting one. It depends on if you have your own rights manager CMS or not. If you don't, then you can reach out to the person that is administering your catalog and do it through their rights manager. They'll have to do it on your behalf, I'm assuming. If you don't know in general, you can always reach out to Meta directly and do that. There are ways of doing that. But as I mentioned before, Meta platforms are still pretty elementary in what they're capable of doing. So my suggestion would be to reach out to the company and provider that is administering your catalog to Meta if you are as a rights holder, and then letting them know that a manual claim needs to be placed on an audio. Let's see here. Let's see if there's any up at the top. Do cue sheets need to be created or submitted for UGC? Rob, do you want to take that one by any chance if you're familiar?
I think I'll just say this, that the rules vary territory to territory. In some territories, they have, reporting mechanisms in place, but I don't know all of the requirements in each territory.
Yeah, my assumption is no. If you're talking about a cue sheet for claiming material, then no, the answer is no. All that reporting comes from YouTube directly. So that would be my assumption, unless Emily, you have anything additional to add on that? No, okay. And then how best to monetize while securing easy and proper whitelisting across platforms? So YouTube is a pretty easy platform to allow list and whitelist on. And for those that you don't know, allow listing or whitelisting, as it's commonly known, is basically putting a channel into the YouTube CMS so that it receives no copyright claims from that specific catalog. So on YouTube, it's very easy. The way Orfium does it, we have an automated way of allow listing channels for our production music clients. Now, when it comes to TikTok and Meta platforms, you will need to reach out to the person that is administering your catalog in order to get those channels or sounds allow listed. It's a much more manual process on those platforms, whereas on YouTube, there are a lot of API'd ways of clearing those channels. So some are manual, some can be automated. And then are there any countries that are not reporting? Emily, do you want to just briefly chime in on that? I don't believe so, but if you want to chime in.
I know YouTube covers 249 territories, which I believe those are all the territories, unless there's more. But I think YouTube covers them all. But I'm not sure about Facebook and TikTok. Bryan would have to answer that.
Yeah. No, I'm unfamiliar with the reporting on TikTok or Meta, but yeah, in terms of YouTube, it does collect an all reporting for all those territories. So let's see here. My current royalty administrator is Songtrust. Is there a conflict with a CMS like Orfium that would prevent me from signing up? I meant a UGC platform rather than a CM. Oh, sorry. A UGC platform rather than a CMS in my last question. So, Emily, do you see this one by any chance? Would you like to chime
Are
in?
you specifically speaking about YouTube, or are you talking about like using Songtrust for YouTube and then Orpheum for TikTok and something else? I think, depending on your contract, you could sign up with different rights management companies for different platforms if you wanted. But if you're wanting to switch, let's say from Songtrust to Orpheum for YouTube, it would cause, once we transfer ownership of the assets, there would be a momentary ownership conflict until the person that you're leaving relinquishes their ownership, if that's what you're asking.
Yeah, thanks, Emily.
Yeah.
And then one more, just on content ID. Regarding YouTube, my content ID is in my current artist name. I have noticed the music that I have composed for films with AKA name credits. Can these earlier 8, also known as, be added to my YouTube content ID?
Yeah, like we were saying earlier, you can update your metadata and content in the CMS. It's no problem. You would just want to reach out to whoever's managing your catalog, and they should be able to update that information for you, no problem.
And then we have another one regarding music licenses in respect to user-generated content. Can you please give us a quick overview of how music use licenses in UGC is respected around the world? I'm going to just touch on this. I hope I answer it correctly, but in order for a music rights management company like Orpheum to administer a license for a production music license, we would need to control both the sound recording and the composition 100% on both sides in order to be releasing claims across UGC platforms, which is something that we currently do and facilitate for all of our clients. So that way, if you sell a license or a sub-publisher sells a license somewhere in Europe, for example, and they sell it in the US, we can actually clear that claim using our licensing software to basically automate that entire process. So I hope that kind of answers your question regarding UGC licensing. And then let's just do one more for the sake of time, and then we can pass it back to Morgan. Let's see here. Keep going down. I got a lot of good questions. How about Snapchat? Are they reporting? This is kind of interesting. I think, to my knowledge, and Rob and Emily, if you have another opinion on it, those are going to be blanket deals. So those reports will be sent out directly back to the rights holders that have the deals with Snapchat. I am unaware of the process of getting music onto Snapchat. I'm not sure, Rob or Emily, if you have any additional thoughts on that. No, okay. Yeah, that's kind of a tricky one, but a really, really good question. So yeah, I'll if we missed any, I'll be sure to follow up with additional answers to any questions. But Morgan, I wanted to pass it back to you. And thank you all again for joining today. If you would like to reach out to myself, Rob, or Emily at any point, if you have any additional questions or follow-up, please feel free to do so. And I hope everybody has a wonderful holiday break.
Thank you, Bryan. There was a question that, if I'm coming in clearly, I hope, about Twitter. Can you touch on Twitter or X as well? Kind of, I know along the same lines as Snapchat, but where things are with Twitter or X?
Yeah, I think it's going to be along the same lines as Snapchat. Again, Orfium doesn't work directly with Twitter or X, and same with Snapchat. So my assumption is that those are going to be all blanket deals direct with the labels and publishers themselves, and then those will be divvied out depending on creations and monetization value. But yeah, I'm sorry, I'm not super familiar with how those platforms are actually collecting.
No worries. Michelle put in, and I knew these deals do exist through the NMPA and sorts. So Michelle just mentioned she gets paid from Snapchat through the NMPA, which was a negotiated deal on behalf of the publishers there. I will say that doesn't extend to Twitter/X yet. I know the NMPA is still fighting that battle as well. So hopefully we are on the right track of kind of getting toward more licensed stuff. Okay. All right. Well, if there is nothing else, no questions, and for the sake of, as you mentioned, Bryan, time and my unstable Wi-Fi, I think we'll call it a day. It's just going to be recorded. It has been recorded. Obviously, will live on our website, on our YouTube as well. Give me a couple of days to get that uploaded. But again, feel free to share amongst your colleagues and friends for those that would find it helpful. Very much a 101 today. So thank you, Emily and Bryan and Rob, for all of your insights. I know we could probably spend hours on hours getting into the nuts and bolts of UGC and social. But I hope this was helpful for kind of a top level, and we'll kind of continue to pick at it and give you guys more insights along the way. So good to see all of you. Thank you for being here. Thank you again, Bryan, Emily. Thank you, Orfium, again for your partnership. Rob, thank you for jumping on with us today.
Yeah.
And for the rest of you, have a wonderful holiday season. We will